some days I kind of sit back and I'm like, wow, did that just happen? Like a little boy is like changing an entire community. And it's a God thing. It's literally a God thing because, you know, it's God that's got him this far. It's God that's brought him to where he is. And I thank God for him every single day. And whether he passes tomorrow, 10 years from now, 100 years from now, I want him to continue to be strong and to have that positive attitude and to be brave and always put God first.
Welcome to the Light Your Heart with Hope podcast. I'm Erin, and I'm so thankful you're here. My hope and prayer is that through listening to today's episode, God will encourage you and do immeasurably more than all you can ask or imagine. In Matthew 17:20, Jesus says, "Truly I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you." Do we believe this? Do we believe that our faith can move mountains? Today, I want to share Becky's story with you. It's a testimony of hope in the midst of heartbreak, the power of prayer in the face of pain, bravery in the brokenness, and the strength of God in our weakness. It's the story of a faith greater than a mustard seed.
It was pretty simple. I mean, I had dreams like everybody else one day, becoming a mom and having a husband and living in the big, beautiful White House with the picket fence. And I've always liked kids. I've always wanted a big family. Growing up, I had a brother and sister, but my mom and dad always took in other children. And I kind of liked it. It was just nice to have more kids to do things with. I worked hard. Sometimes I worked 2 and 3 jobs. And then things just happened the way they did. And I was blessed with my first daughter, Alyssa. I was 17 when I had her, so I was young. It was a lot of learning. Thank God I lived very close to my parents, because without my parents, I don't know what I would have done. But yeah, I think that I was probably an average kid, had dreams, made lots of mistakes, kind of learned as you went along type kid. I met Nick on a blind date. Before you know it, he asked me to marry him, and we've been together for 24 years. So when I found out I was pregnant, I was super, super excited, and I couldn't wait for him to get home to tell him. And he was kind of shocked, but he was excited too. I was super excited, couldn't wait to meet Nicholas. He was born, and he looked super healthy. He was super cute. I just wanted to squeeze him and kiss him and hug on him. He passed all his baby test. We got to take him home, and things were going good. But I'm going to say about a week and a half, 2 weeks after being home, he would vomit a lot and he would cry a lot. I took him to the pediatrician, and the pediatrician told me, he's a colicky baby. Do certain things, try swaddling him. We changed his formula several times, thinking, maybe gas or upset stomach, but nothing really seemed to help. He's still there was no change. And if anything, I felt like the vomiting had gotten worse. It went from just spitting up a lot to when he threw up, it was projectile. So I took him to the local emergency room. And I was like, listen, I've been taking him to the pediatrician. We've changed formulas a million times. I've done everything for gas, upset stomachs. I have him elevated a little bit, but he's just not comfortable. And I said, I know my baby, and I don't feel like that it's just something simple. I think there's more. Maybe he has something wrong with his stomach. Can you guys do x-rays or whatever it is you do to find out what's going on? And they admitted him to the hospital. He was dehydrated the first time. But I remember one of the nurses coming in, and she said something to me. She's like, you see how his eyes keep doing that? She's like, that's not normal. And she's like, there's something wrong with your baby. And it kind of upset me to the point where when she left the room, I cried. I talked to my husband about it a little bit. And then I felt led to go say something that, that I thought that she was incredibly rude by coming in there and saying that. I just felt like they didn't take me serious. And I felt like, I was trying to get help for my child. And I just felt like no matter who I called or what hospital I went to or what doctor I seen, they all thought like I was nuts. They let us come home, and things still continue to get worse. I changed pediatrician like 3 times. Finally, I changed to a different pediatrician. And every so often, Nicholas would let out like a yawn. And he did it several times a day. But when he yawned, he would like stretch his arms and legs out. I just thought he was just super tired because he barely slept because he would cry so much. This new pediatrician came in, and just as he walked in the door, Nicholas was yawning, and he come right over and like looked at him, and he's like, "Oh my God." He's like, "I'm calling for an ambulance. You guys need to go to a children's hospital. Your son is having a seizure." And I was like, "What?" It scared the crap out of me, but I didn't know. Like, I seen him do this all the time. I never knew it was a seizure. So they rushed him to a children's hospital. They did a whole bunch of testing. I was scared. I didn't know what was going on. The only thing they came back is they told me that he had some swelling in his brain, and they were still doing tests to kind of see what was going on, that he could be like allergic to something. He was in the hospital about a week and a half. They let us come home, and we still didn't have like a definite diagnosis, like told me anything scary. They did put him on some seizure medicine, told me that if I seen him like staring, or like if he would stretch out and those continued to get worse, or if anything else had changed, to bring him back. So we went home, and we were only home, I'm going to say about 3 to 4 days. And he was just really like, just very irritable. Finally, like I called my mom like I normally do. And I was like, "Mom, I'm so tired." I was like, "Can you come help me with Nicholas? Even if you just let me sleep an hour." So she's like, "Of course." She came over and got him. She went over to the house, and I laid down, just was starting to doze off, and my phone rings, and it was my dad. And he's like, "We're calling 911. Nicholas just threw up and it's all blood." I knew something was like really wrong. Like, his color didn't look good. So we called an ambulance, and they had a helicopter land in my mom and dad's back field. I called my husband from work. He came right home. We met the helicopter at the children's hospital. Well, when we got there, like, things were a little awkward. I felt like they weren't letting us in the room. They weren't like updating us very much. Finally, they had somebody come out, and they had 2 people like with the doctor or nurse that came out to talk to us. And they said that they wanted us to be supervised when we went in by him, because they were doing testing, and they really thought that maybe I was doing something to Nicholas for attention. I was like, "What?" Like, I would never do anything like this. Like, I was shocked, and I was like, "It's not me. It's not me." And then I looked over at my mom. I'm like, "Oh my God, it's my mom. That's the only other person it could be that would be doing something to him." And my mom was like, no, it's not me. It's not me. And they finally let us in the room. He was hooked up to a bunch of stuff. I was still young, to see your child on all this equipment and IVs and a breathing tube. It was very scary. And then feeling like you have to have somebody watch you, being there to sit with your child, knowing that, hey, I didn't do anything to my kid. If anything, look at the reports. I took them to the emergency rooms. I took them to the doctors. Like, I kept begging for help because I knew in my heart that there was something not right. I kind of felt lost. I felt like it was like the end. I thought they were going to take my kid away from me. And all I wanted to know was what was wrong with him. I wanted him to be fixed. I wanted to help him. It was very emotional, caused some problems in my marriage, because at some point I even blamed my husband. And I think in the back of my husband's mind, he was believing what everybody was saying. But anyway, they were able to take him off the breathing tube. And the one day we had left the Ronald McDonald House, and we went over to go in the room. And usually, like when I asked the nurse, we had to wait for like somebody to go in to watch us, to sit in there with us. Well, the nurse told us to go ahead in. Well, I was a little nervous going in because there was nobody in there. So I thought that was a little odd. Like I wanted to go over to him and touch him, but I was afraid to because there wasn't a nurse in there. The doctor came in shortly after we had arrived, and she said that for me to call my family and that they figured out what was wrong with him and that she would like to have a family meeting with us around 2:00. So I was like, oh my God, thank God. And I'm like, I told you it wasn't me. And she's like, well, listen, just spend time with your son right now and we'll discuss everything later. She did apologize. She said that, but it's not uncommon for, parents to abuse their kids and then try to, blame it on something else or try to hide it. At the time I didn't understand that, but I guess now I kind of understand that a little better. So I remember going in the room and the doctor sat us all down. I had my brother and my sister there, my husband, of course, and my parents. And she's like, Mrs. Barassa, I'm so sorry, but we know what's wrong with your son. We sent some blood test out to Philadelphia, and it came back that your son has Krabbe's disease. I was like, oh my gosh, thank goodness. Now, I didn't know what Krabbe's disease was, but I was just so happy they knew what was wrong with him. I'm like, oh my gosh, thank goodness. I'm so happy. Will I be able to take my son home now? What do we do? Like, does he just take a medication? Will he not be able to walk? I didn't know. And she just stared at me, but I was like, so happy that they finally told me what was wrong with him. And she's like, Mrs. Barassa, you're not going to be able to take him home. We suspect that he'll live maybe 2 more weeks. My heart sank. I don't get it. From then on, like she was telling me what Krabbe's disease was and all this. And my mind, I saw her mouth moving, but I heard absolutely nothing. I felt like somebody had taken my heart and just ripped it out of my chest and just stomped on it a million times. I felt angry, thinking, hey, my son only has 2 more weeks yet. The last several weeks, you guys have made me have supervised visits, not be able to spend time with my son like I want to. I had like all these different emotions, and I was angry with God. I was angry with my husband. I was angry with my parents. I just had so much anger. I went back in the room and I just held him. I hugged him. I loved on him. I looked at him and I couldn't see that, like, it was real, that it was true, that, this was it. I decided that I wanted to take my son home. I didn't want him in a hospital. We had signed the papers for hospice and stuff. So they sent him home like on oxygen, a suction machine, a whole bunch of medications. I had to learn how to be a mom and a nurse within, so many hours. It was a lot to take in, but we got him home. And then every time he would stop breathing, I would call 911 because I guess I wasn't ready. And I kept saying, no, God, no, it's not time. You can't take my kid. They would take him to the hospital. They would put him on the ventilator. And then they would come in and have this big, long talk with me. And then it would take me some time and my family to be there and pray with me and calm me down. And then we would say, okay, we'll stop the life support. And we did that 2 different times. And he lived both times. I was like, oh my God, God's going to heal him. This is not, he's not going to die. And by then now we've already passed the 2 weeks. And I was like, he's not going to die. He's going to live. The doctor's like, well, he's not going to make it past 6 months then. Well, then, 6 months come and he was still here. And I was like super excited. I put him to bed and he was breathing a little awkward. He almost sounded like gurgly. And I was suctioning him out really good. His sat started to drop. He was just working really hard to breathe. I called the hospice nurse, and then things like started declining extremely fast. And I got scared again. Part of me wanted to be home and stay home with him, but part of me, I wasn't ready to let go. So again, I called 911. They airlifted him to Philadelphia hospital. I remember walking in the room and his body was so swollen. He had all these tubes and wires, and he had chest tubes in, and he was on a ventilator. And I'm like, what did I do? Like, what did I do? I kind of felt bad for, I guess, putting him through his little body through all that, because I didn't want to let him go. But at the same time, I was so happy that he was still here. The doctor, of course, came in and said, we need to talk to you. And I was just blunt with the doctor. I was frustrated. I had all these emotions. I was like, listen, honestly, you're wasting my time. I know what you're going to tell me. It's going to be an hour-long talk about blah, 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 Krabbe's disease, what it does. This is what would be best for your son. And I was like, I could be spending that hour with my son. And I said, I don't want to hear this speech again. I said, so please just leave the room. Let me be with my son. When my husband and I are ready to say enough is enough, then we will let you know. Oh, this is what else I said. I said, and I believe in God. I said 2 times I was told he wasn't going to live. And we stopped the life support stuff and he lived. I said, so, sometimes doctors aren't right. And I said, I believe in God. And he's like, well, right now to your son, I am his God. And it's because of me that he's still alive right now. And I was like, what? Like, I jumped across, like my mom and husband were holding me back. Like, I was swinging my arms. I was yelling at this man. I was like, you get out of this room. I don't want you in this room with my son. I don't want you around me. He left the room. I was just so angry. And I went over there and I was just crying. And my mom's like, well, let's pray. Let's just pray around Nicholas. And at that time, Nicholas had, by then, he had lost his voice. So I knew that he was crying sometimes because he would have tears come out of his eyes, but his eyes stayed closed. I hadn't seen his eyes in probably a month. He just didn't open his eyes anymore. And I went over there and I was looking at him and we started to pray. And I usually close my eyes when I pray, but something told me to open my eyes. And when I did, Nicholas's eyes were wide open. And I mean, like, wide open. And he was staring right at me. And I interrupted my mom's prayer and I'm like, he's awake, his eyes. And I said, Nick, please grab me the camera. And I quick took a picture of his eyes. And when I moved, he followed me with his eyes. When I looked in his eyes, I just knew that he was saying, Mom, I'm tired. And Mom, you're going to be okay. But it's time. I knew it. It hit me. I felt it. It hit me right in my chest. It took my breath away. I said, okay, baby. I told my husband what I had felt. And he said, okay. So we told the nurse that we wanted to stop life support, but we wanted to wait till my dad got there. My dad no more walked in the room, and the monitor started you could see like his heart would beat a little bit and then it would stop, and it would beat a little bit and then it would stop. And then she turned off the breathing thing, and he began to just pass. And it's hard to talk about it because it makes some emotions come up. I'm grateful that my dad was able to be there. I'm grateful that Nicholas let me know. And I'm grateful that God chose me to be Nicholas's mommy, because I don't think any other mommy could love him as much as I did. That's for darn sure. As much as I miss him, some days, I'm not going to lie, some days it's still hard. He passed in 2003, and some days I can still smell him. Some days I can close my eyes and it feels like I'm touching his skin. I can still see him, his little brown hair sticking up. Some days it's harder than others. Some days I still get a little angry with God, but I think God knows my heart. I know that everything happens for a reason. And because of Nicholas, I know that I'm a better person. I'm a better mom. I'm a better friend. I'm a better daughter. And I don't take life for granted. That's for darn sure. And I'm very thankful for what God gives me. I try not to complain, even things that you don't even think of, being able to talk, to be able to hear, to touch, to feel. I'm thankful for those things. A lot of people take those things for granted. Truthfully, if it wasn't for Nicholas, I don't think I would understand that part of life as good as I do. Joshua, let's see where to start with him. So not long after Nicholas passed, I did find out I was pregnant. I was scared. I think my husband was even more scared. We didn't plan it, wasn't expecting it, but I did some research and my mom helped me. We saw that they were doing things for Krabbe's disease. And I believe it was actually through the Hunter's Hope website that you guys were saying that North Carolina at Duke University was doing transplants. And I was like, well, Mom, before we jump the gun, I was like, we've been praying about this, and this baby's not going to be born with Krabbe. This baby's going to be healthy. Like, God's not going to put us through this again. Like, there's no way. Like, he would never do this to us. Man, we prayed. And I was about 12 weeks along, and I agreed to have the test done to see if, if they send the tissue away to see if the baby would be positive for Krabbe. So I did that. And the whole time I wasn't scared. I wasn't nervous. I held my faith and I said, nope. Anytime somebody tried to be negative, I was like, nope, it's not going to happen. God's not going to let it happen. He loves us too much. This is not going to happen. I had a little thing of mustard seeds with anointing oil in it. And I kept that with me all the time. I was like, you see that, how tiny that seed is? I said, trust me, I have more faith in that. Anyway, I was getting ready for work and my phone rang and I answered it. And they're like, Mrs. Barrasso, we got your results in and we're so sorry, but your baby will have Krabbe's disease. And I was like, no, it won't. Like, you're wrong. And she's like, no, she's like, everything came back and the baby was positive. So I hung up the phone and I just dropped to my knees and I cried and I cried. And I really didn't even have time to kind of process what I was just told. And my phone rang again. It was the doctor's office. And they're like, hey, this is so-and-so, and we're calling you to schedule you for your abortion. And I was like, abortion? What are you talking about? And they're like, well, they said that you had a positive Krabbe result. So we're sure that you want to terminate the pregnancy. I said, first of all, how dare you call me? I just literally received the news within 10, 15 minutes and you're already calling me. I said, I never once said anything about an abortion. So I was super angry and they apologized. I hung up the phone. I called my doctor and the doctor really was like pushing me to have an abortion. Mrs. Barrasso, you saw what Krabbe's did to your first son. There's no chance of survival. There's no treatment. There's no cure. There's no nothing. Like, if you bring this child into this world, you're just bringing yourself and your family more heartache. He pushed me so hard to the point where I actually changed doctors because I personally don't believe in abortions. Regardless of the situation, that's just who I am. And nobody's going to change my mind about that. I prayed and I was like, God, maybe their test is wrong. And maybe this is you just testing me. And I said, I'm not gonna do this. And my husband and I, we decided together that, hey, exactly, we're not gonna do this. I chose to keep Joshua, but then we called North Carolina, Duke University, and I told them my situation. They're like, well, absolutely. So I went down. We met Dr. Kurtzberg. She told us some things. She said that if we had Joshua there, that they could start the testing and do the transplant right away, right after birth. And that would increase his chances of survival. So we were all about it. And I was like, Nick, everything's going to be okay. we got this. They told us that Josh would be the ninth baby to be transplanted. So I went down a month before my due date, and we moved into a Ronald McDonald house. We lost everything we owned. We let our cars get repossessed. We lost the place we were living in. We had nothing. If it wasn't for my parents helping us financially, I'll be honest with you, I don't even know what we would have done. Very thankful for the Ronald McDonald House. They were wonderful. We lived there for a year and a half. They helped us with anything we needed. Joshua was born at Duke University. He was super tiny. Like, I have pictures of him like the size of a banana and an apple. Like, that's how big he was. He was 4 pounds, 2 ounces. He was super tiny, super skinny, and he moved around a lot, very squirmy. But he was super cute. I got to spend a few minutes with him, after he was born, and then they took him right away for testing. The Sunday, it was a couple days after the Sunday, we got to spend like the whole day with him. Did like some special things with him because the next day we knew they were going to start the chemo. He was a trooper. They started the transplant. Really didn't have too many side effects, but he did really well. He engrafted really quickly. He did so good, in fact, that they discharged him and let him go to the Ronald McDonald House. And they said if he continued to do good for 6 months, they would let us go back home to Pennsylvania. Again, I was being a mom and a nurse. I had to learn how to do his blood draws, keep the central lines cleaned, medications like around the clock, hooking up IVs. It was a lot, but I did it. He was doing really good. And then he had like a setback. He started like breathing really hard. I rushed him back over to the hospital. They admitted him. At one point, we didn't even think he was going to make it overnight. He had swelled his heart. I guess from the steroids, his heart had stiffened, and he had a lot of fluid. But the pastor of our church, Pastor Tim, he came down. We prayed over Josh. Slowly, Josh started to improve. It was a little touch and go, but he improved. He was doing good. They stopped the steroids, but Josh continued to do really well. We got to go home. We lived in North Carolina the first year of his life. I couldn't wait to come home. We finally got him home. Josh did good. Everything that the doctor said could happen or would happen didn't. There's been several times where, Josh likes to keep me on my toes. So he, would do something crazy and decide, not to breathe one day or have a really bad seizure one day. But for the most part, Josh did really well. And my husband and I, we slowly started to get back on our feet. Josh got bigger. He got stronger. He did really, really well for till he was about 8, 9 years old, I'm going to say. Josh has always been so full of life. You can see like the joy in his eyes. He never complains. Anybody that just meets him, they just fall in love with him, and they'll come back and say, oh, he's touched my life in this way, or he's changed me in this way. And I'm like, God, if I would have listened to those doctors and terminated the pregnancy, all these people, he wouldn't have had this impact on these people. And that makes me extremely happy. It makes me feel like warm and tingly. I get really excited to think about that because I can definitely see God using Josh in ways that I never thought was even possible. So Josh started to get very weak on his right side, and his health started to change a little bit. And I really thought like he had had a stroke. So we took him to the pediatrician, and they're like, well, I don't know, you should probably follow up with the transplant team. And we did. And that's when we found out that the peripheral nerve disease, and that even the kids that were transplanted, they still need the gene therapy. That part's a little hard because I feel like God has used him so much and has brought him this far. And I've seen his health decline. So sometimes I I question God. Sometimes I still get angry sometimes. Everybody thinks that I'm like this strong person, and everybody thinks that I don't get angry, and everybody thinks that like I'm like a little angel, and I'm not. I'm not. Like, I'm still human, and I have emotions. And I will tell you, most days I trust God. Most days I love God. Most days I can see the beauty in everything that he does. But I do have those some days where I'm like, God, why would you do this to me? Why would you do this to my children? Why would you do this to Josh's brothers and sisters? Why, God? Why? And I get it out. And then God always hits me with something, whether it be somebody coming to talk to me, saying the right thing, or a Bible verse. And I'm like, wow, why? I got to stop getting angry with God. Like, because I know that he's in control. And I know that, Josh's life was written way before he was even born. And Josh has a purpose. I have a purpose. You have a purpose. We all have a purpose. I think that sometimes in life that, especially nowadays, you have so many addictions, social media. I feel like that's like a big addiction for people. And I feel like we waste time. I feel like God is always there, but God is kind of just sitting there. He's waiting, and he's like, hey, you have choices to make. Are you going to continue doing what you're doing and waste time, or are you going to do good works to glorify me? How are you going to live your life? And I feel very strongly that my situation is to glorify God. I've been through a lot. My family's been through a lot. But as much hurt that we've had so much joy and so much love and so much just heartfelt, just I don't even know what the right word would be to explain it, to be honest with you. We just pour our hearts out into things that we do. I'm okay with whatever God's plans are because I trust him and I love him. Do I think that if something were to happen with Josh, would I be heartbroken? Yes, I would. I'm still his mom here. I'm still human, but I know that I have to continue to trust him, and I have to stay focused on him and what his plan is, and, his good works. I think that sometimes people will speak things, and if you're going to constantly live in the negative and constantly speak negative, well, then negative's going to happen. But if you're going to constantly live in the positive and speak positive, well, then positive's going to happen. I think that's something really important, that regardless of what you're going through, that everybody should know that you're not alone. And there's things that are way worse off. I correct myself now because I remember years and years ago, I had a kind of like a pity party. Oh, poor me. I lost my child. My child died. But no, my child's living. My child's in heaven. He's pain-free. He's dancing. He's singing. One day I'm going to see him. To think about, what heaven is like, to me, that's just so amazing. And then I also feel very blessed because I don't know how to explain this, but some people, they live life and then something bad happens to a loved one. Say they're in a car accident and they're like, oh, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have said this. I feel like sometimes I'm blessed because you kind of know things. So you have time to prepare, but you also it's not only about preparing, it's about the bond, the love. And it's about, hey, you know what? You're right. Nobody's promised tomorrow. I'm not going to worry about tomorrow. I'm not going to worry about next week. I'm living for today. What matters most today. And it kind of saddens me that, some people don't see life that way. Kind of like the song that Tim McGraw sings, live like you're dying. You know what I mean? Like, I like that song because it's true. Like, if people would see with my eyes and kind of see what I see and feel what I feel, we're all very blessed, and nobody's promised tomorrow. So, with Joshua, I always tell him, Josh, you don't let the negative in. We're going to think positive. We pray all the time. And he's like, Mom, I think my right arm's going to start working today. I'm like, that's right, buddy. You keep that. I don't treat Josh like he's dying. If Josh wants to do something, we go and do it. Josh wanted to see what it was like to roller skate. So I'm going to tell you what I did. I bought him roller skates. I rigged his gate trainer and I took him roller skating. He didn't like it, but he got to experience it. Josh wanted to go on a roller coaster. I hate roller coasters. So I put him on a roller coaster. I held him so tight. We did a roller coaster together. Josh, I don't know, that boy, he gives me gray hair every day. I tell Josh, nothing's impossible with God. Everything's possible. And, I said, buddy, if there's something you want to do, we're going to do it. I said, I don't care what it takes to do it. We're going to do it. I think by teaching your children to be positive, and even when, doctors have literally said to his face, Josh, this is your disease. This is what happens. Eventually, you're not going to be able to breathe. Do you want to be put on life support? We're going through this transition thing. Josh is now 18. Doctors told me that it's not my choice. It's Josh's choice. I had to get a lawyer to get our legal guardianship. It's been tough because these adult doctors ask him very serious questions. As a matter of fact, the one day he was sitting there, the doctor was telling him, you will die, Josh. I was like, yeah, everybody dies one day. The point of your story is what? You know what I mean? She was just like, well, the disease is progressing. We've seen a change. His breathing is not good. Josh is just sitting there and he's eating a Twinkie. He loves those like chocolate Twinkies. And he's like, hold on. He's finished chewing this Twinkie. He wipes his mouth with his one hand and he's like, listen. He's like, you guys been telling me and telling my mom that I was going to die way before I was even born. And guess what? I'm still here. So stop making my mom upset and stop making her cry all the time, or I'm going to knock you out. I began to laugh because, not that I want Josh to be disrespectful, but I was like, good job, buddy. You stand up for yourself. But that's Josh's personality. He doesn't let this world define who he is. And he doesn't let the doctors define who he is. He's a fighter. I thank God for him every day. And it's crazy because I live in a very small community and my community has been amazing. The police have been amazing. And everybody loves Josh so much. I go downtown and people approach me. Hey, I just want to let you know you're Trooper Josh's mom. I'm like, I am. I just want to let you know that he has touched my heart. He has changed my life. He's such an inspiration. He makes me want to be a better person. And some days I kind of sit back and I'm like, wow, did that just happen? Like a little boy is like changing an entire community. And it's a God thing. It's literally a God thing because it's God that's got him this far. It's God that's brought him to where he is. And I thank God for him every single day. And whether he passes tomorrow, 10 years from now, 100 years from now, I want him to continue to be strong and to have that positive attitude and to be brave and always put God first. And, I want that for all my children. Some days it's hard. Not going to lie. Some days it's hard. Trusting God is the most important thing you can do. That's all I can say is just trusting God. And Josh is, and where he is today is because of God. And God is definitely using him in a mighty way. But Josh just turned 18. He's doing really, really well. And he's very bossy. He likes things his way. He's just an amazing kid, amazing young man. He's not even a kid no more. He's a young man. And now his new thing is he's looking for a wife. So pray for that because I'm praying for a woman a godly woman, and he wants a wife, and he wants to get married, and he wants to have 4 kids, and he wants to have his own place. And I told him, well, you can have your own place, but I'm going to be in the next room. Always watching you, Josh. No, that's what he tells me. No, Mom. So, and he just graduated. He got a standing ovation. They let Corporal Berman hand him his diploma and salute him on stage. It was beautiful. All his classmates stood up. It was just pretty amazing. And so, you think of the kids, especially the younger generation. Josh has touched those kids in such a way that, some of those kids have come to me, hey, I want to be in the Army. I want to be in the military because of Josh. Or, I want to be a police officer because of Josh. Or I want to be a nurse because of Josh. Even kids, he's touching the lives of kids. So, I think that's pretty amazing. Josh is definitely one of a kind. I'm going to tell you that. He's definitely one of a kind. I'm going to be honest with you. If I just know God, it seems like God is just always there. Even when I feel like he's not there, he's there. And I may not see it exactly in that moment, but you feel it. You know what I mean? Like you just know. And I'm a firm believer, life is what you make of it. You have choices, and you could choose to be miserable and have a pity party every day, or you could choose to be happy and go out there and, work really hard. And you know what? You could be a light to somebody else. Use your situation. Don't let Satan get the best of you, and don't let Satan not let your light shine. God blesses us different ways. Always put God first. And life is hard. We live in a very scary world right now, but I look forward to one day being in heaven, and you got to keep your eye on that. Stay focused on that. Stay focused on God's promises. And even if you feel like God's not there, trust me, he's there. It's okay. Cry out to him, depend on him, tell him when you're angry, tell him how you feel, read the Bible. That's been a big help for me. Have a family that supports you. And if you don't have a family that supports you, find a friend, a church, something, because there's people that do love you. And, God loves us all very much. He wants to use our situations for his glory and his good. I think that that's important that people know that, so that they can take their situation, and instead of constantly saying about the negative, talk about the good and give God the glory for it.
Wow, God is so good. Becky's story strengthened my faith in so many ways. I'm reminded that in the midst of pain and uncertainty, our faith in Christ is what holds us. Joshua inspires me to live a life fully surrendered to God, glorifying him with every breath he's given me. To learn more about Becky, Joshua, and their story, check out the show notes. In next week's episode, I am so excited for you guys to hear a story about the goodness of God in the midst of uncertainty. That when life is uncertain, we can turn to the certainty found in Christ. Thank you so much for being here. I hope that Becky's story and Joshua's life encourage you to share your own story. You matter, your life matters, and your story can make an impact that matters for eternity. Make a difference today for someone who is fighting for their tomorrow.